Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and every relationship in your life is transformed overnight. The tension that used to hang heavy in the air has dissolved. The walls that separated you from those you love have crumbled. The pain of misunderstanding has been replaced by a deep soul-level connection that feels like coming home after a long journey. Now open your eyes to this moment, to reality, to the truth that such a transformation isn't just a dream, it's a possibility waiting to unfold in your life, right here, right now. Let me share something that shook me to my core recently. I was sitting in my garden watching two birds on a branch. For several minutes, these tiny creatures engaged in what looked like an intense dispute over territory. They puffed their feathers, chirped aggressively, and seemed ready for conflict. But then, something remarkable happened. Instead of fighting, they began a beautiful dance of accommodation. One bird shifted slightly, making room for the other. They found their rhythm, their balance. And in that moment, I witnessed one of nature's most profound lessons about conflict resolution. We're not so different from those birds, are we? Each of us, in our own way, is trying to find our place on the branch of life. We're all seeking connection while protecting our space, our truth, our essence. And sometimes, just like those birds, we puff ourselves up, ready for battle, when all we really need is to learn the dance of accommodation. Today, we're going to explore the art of resolving conflicts in any relationship. But this isn't just another talk about communication techniques or compromise. This is about something far deeper. It's about transforming the very foundation of how we relate to others and, most importantly, to ourselves. You see, every conflict we experience in our external relationships is first born in the battlefield of our own hearts. Every argument, every misunderstanding, every broken connection, they all begin with an internal struggle we haven't yet resolved. Think about the last major conflict you experienced. Maybe it was with a spouse who seemed distant and unreachable. Perhaps it was with a parent who just couldn't understand your choices, or possibly a colleague whose very presence triggered something uncomfortable. Close your eyes for a moment. Bring that conflict to mind. Feel the emotions that stirred in you. The frustration, the hurt, the anger, the fear. Now hold on to that feeling, because we're going to use it as our compass on this journey of transformation. The first truth we need to embrace is this: conflict isn't the enemy. Conflict is the messenger. When we experience discord in our relationships, it's not a sign that something is broken. It's a sign that something is ready to be healed. Every major breakthrough in human history came through conflict. Every scientific discovery, every social evolution, every personal transformation, they all emerged from the tension between what was and what could be. The same principle applies to our relationships. We try to resolve conflicts at the surface level while ignoring the deeper currents that created them. We focus on winning arguments instead of understanding hearts. We prioritize being right over being connected. How many times have you won an argument but lost a connection? How many times have you stood your ground, proven your point, and felt the invisible threads of relationship fray just a little bit more? The path to resolving conflicts isn't about developing better arguing techniques. It's about developing a deeper understanding of the human heart, starting with your own. Today, we're going to explore 5 fundamental truths about conflict resolution that will transform how you approach every relationship in your life. These aren't just theories or techniques, that they're gateways to a new way of being, a new way of connecting, a new way of living. The very conflict is a cry for understanding. When someone opposes us, challenges us, or seems to attack us, they're really saying, see me, hear me, understand me, even if their words are harsh, even if their actions are hurtful. Beneath the surface is a soul crying out for connection. I remember walking into a room where 2 colleagues were locked in what seemed like an irreconcilable conflict. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But as I sat with them and helped them peel back the layers of their argument, something remarkable emerged. What appeared to be a dispute about project deadlines was really about feeling valued. What looked like anger about missed meetings was really fear about being left behind. This brings us to a crucial understanding. The presenting issue in a conflict is rarely the real issue. The topic of the argument is usually just the tip of the iceberg. the visible part of a much deeper reality. When we grasp this truth, everything changes. And instead of reacting to the words being spoken, we begin to listen for the needs being expressed. Instead of defending against attacks, we start looking for the pain behind the anger. But do this, we must first make peace with our own pain. We must become intimate with our own fears, our own needs, our own unspoken desires. Because until we understand the depths of our own heart, we cannot truly understand another. Think about a time when you felt completely understood by someone. Remember how that felt? That moment when another human being really got you? Not just your words, but your essence. That's what we're aiming for in conflict resolution. The ability to create that space of understanding, even in the midst of disagreement, is perhaps the most powerful skill we can develop in our relationships. It's not about agreeing with everything the other person says or does. It's about maintaining connection, even in the presence of disagreement. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. When we're triggered, when we feel attacked or misunderstood, our natural instinct is to defend, to fight back, to protect ourselves. That's normal. That's human. The key is not to eliminate these reactions, but to create space between the trigger and our reaction. In that space lies our power to transform conflicts into connections. In that pause between stimulus and response lies our ability to choose a different path. That brings us to the second fundamental truth. The quality of our relationships is directly proportional to our willingness to be vulnerable. Real conflict resolution requires us to lower our shields, to step out from behind our walls of defense, and to show up with an open heart. This vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the ultimate form of strength. It takes more courage to show your heart than to show your anger. It requires more power to remain open than to close down. The true warrior in relationship isn't the one who never falls, but the one who keeps getting back up, keeps opening up, keeps reaching for connection even when it's hard. The most powerful force in any relationship isn't love. It's fear. Fear of being hurt. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing control. When we understand this, we begin to see conflict through entirely new eyes. Because what most people don't realize about conflict, behind every argument, behind every defensive reaction, behind every wall we build, there's a heart that's trying to protect itself from pain. Once you understand this, you'll never look at relationship conflicts the same way again. I want you to think about someone in your life right now. Someone with whom you're experiencing conflict. Someone who triggers you, frustrates you, maybe even makes you angry. Got that person in mind? What if they're reality? I want you to consider something revolutionary. What if their behavior isn't about you at all? What if their actions, their words, their attitudes are really about their own fears and pain? This brings us to our third fundamental truth. The person who triggers us the most is often our greatest teacher. They show us where we still need to heal, where we still need to grow, where we still need to learn. Let me share a profound realization that changed everything for me. Every time I found myself in conflict with someone, I noticed a pattern. The things that bothered me most in others were often reflections of aspects of myself I hadn't fully accepted or healed. When someone's perceived selfishness bothered me, it was often because I hadn't acknowledged my own needs. When someone's anger triggered me, it was frequently because I hadn't made peace with my own anger. The universe has a fascinating way of using our relationships as mirrors, showing us exactly where we need to focus our inner work. This understanding leads us to a revolutionary approach to conflict resolution. Instead of asking, why are they doing this to me? We begin asking, what is this conflict trying to teach me? Every conflict is like a locked door, and behind that door is a treasure of self-knowledge and growth. The key to unlocking that door isn't in proving yourself right or the other person wrong. The key is in understanding both yourself and the other person. Here's the fourth truth, and it might be the hardest to accept. In every conflict, both parties contribute to the dynamic. Even if it seems like the other person is entirely at fault, our reaction to their behavior becomes part of the equation. When we truly grasp this, we move from being victims of conflict to becoming masters of resolution. We shift from look what they're doing to me to what am I bringing to this situation? But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something most people never realize. The moment you take responsibility for your part in any conflict, you gain power. Not power over the other person, but power over the situation. Because while you can't control their behavior, you have complete control over your response. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. In every conflict, you have a choice. You can react from your wounds, or you can respond from your wisdom. You can speak from your hurt, or you can communicate from your heart. This brings us to one of the most powerful tools in conflict resolution, the pause. When you feel triggered, when emotions are running high, when you're about to say something you might regret, in that pause lies your power. In that space between stimulus and response lies your freedom to choose. But let's be real. This isn't easy. Our automatic reactions are deeply ingrained. They're like well-worn paths in the forest of our minds. Creating new paths requires conscious effort, patience, and practice. Here's a truth that might surprise you. The goal in conflict resolution isn't to avoid conflict. The goal is to engage with conflict in a way that leads to growth and deeper connection. Think about that. What if every conflict was actually an opportunity to understand yourself better, to understand others more deeply, to create stronger, more authentic relationships? This leads us to our fifth fundamental truth. The way we handle conflict shapes not just our relationships, but our entire life experience. Every time we choose understanding over judgment, connection over protection, growth over comfort, we're not just resolving a conflict, we're evolving as human beings. What if the conflicts in your life aren't obstacles to your happiness, but doorways to your growth? What if the very relationships that challenge you the most are actually your greatest opportunities for transformation? Let me share something powerful with you. The moment you start seeing conflict as an opportunity rather than an obstacle, everything changes. Your energy shifts, your approach transforms. Instead of dreading difficult conversations, you begin to see them as chances to create deeper understanding. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait for the other person to change first. They think, if only they would understand, if only they would listen, if only they would change. But true transformation begins with us. It starts with our willingness to see things differently, to respond differently, to show up differently. Remember those birds I mentioned earlier? Their dance of accommodation wasn't about one bird completely giving up its space. It was about both birds finding a new way to be together. That's what real conflict resolution looks like. Not compromise where everyone loses something, but collaboration where everyone gains something new. The truth is, most conflicts don't need to be won or lost. They need to be understood. When we shift our focus from winning to understanding, from being right to being connected, we open up possibilities we never knew existed. Think about it. How many times have you been absolutely certain you were right about something, only to later discover there was another way of seeing it? How many times has your perspective shifted once you truly understood where the other person was coming from? This is why the most powerful question in conflict resolution isn't how can I win this argument, but what am I not seeing here? When we approach conflicts with curiosity instead of certainty, with a desire to understand rather than a need to be right, everything changes. Now, let's dive into something that most people completely misunderstand about conflict resolution. Many think it's about finding the right words or mastering certain techniques. But here's the deeper, the most powerful tool in resolving any conflict isn't what you say. It's who you become in that. Think about the people in your life who have a natural ability to bring peace to tense situations. What's their secret? Is it their words? Their techniques? No. It's their presence. It's who they are being in that moment of conflict. When you're fully present, when you're truly listening with your whole being, you create a field of understanding that can dissolve even the most stubborn conflicts. This isn't about passive listening or just nodding your head. This is about bringing your full presence to the moment. Imagine for a moment that every person you meet is carrying an invisible backpack. In that backpack are all their hurts, their fears, their disappointments, their unmet needs. When someone lashes out in anger or withdraws in hurt, they're often reacting from the weight of that. Is where it gets interesting. The moment you can see beyond their behavior to the weight they're carrying, something magical happens. Your own defensiveness begins to dissolve. Your heart opens. You start responding to their pain rather than reacting to their behavior. But and this is crucial, you can only do this when you've acknowledged your own backpack, when you've made peace with your own pain, when you've embraced your own shadows. This is why self-awareness is the foundation of all conflict resolution. Have you ever noticed how some conflicts seem to follow you from relationship to relationship, different people, different situations? But somehow the same pattern keeps showing up. That's not coincidence. That's your unresolved inner conflict seeking resolution through external relationships. This brings us to a revolutionary understanding. Every external conflict is an invitation to inner healing. Every difficult relationship is a mirror showing us where we need to grow. Picture this, you're standing in front of a mirror that's slightly dusty. The image you see is distorted. Now, would you try to clean the reflection? Of course not. You'd clean the mirror itself. Yet in our relationships, we often try to fix the reflection, the other person's behavior, instead of cleaning our own lens of perception. Something that might shake you to your core. What if every person who has ever hurt you was actually sent to heal you? What if every conflict you've experienced was actually a gift, an opportunity to grow, to learn, to become more of who you truly are? I know this might sound challenging, especially if you're dealing with deep hurt or seemingly irreconcilable differences. But stay with me here, because this understanding can transform every relationship in your life. The quality of your life is directly proportional to the quality of your relationships. And the quality of your relationships is directly proportional to your ability to handle conflict with wisdom and grace. But here's what most people don't realize. True conflict resolution isn't about making the conflict go away. It's about using the conflict as a catalyst for growth. It's about allowing the heat of disagreement to forge stronger connections, deeper understanding, and more authentic relationships. Think about metal being forged. It's the heat that makes it stronger. It's the pressure that transforms it. In the same way, it's often our most challenging relationships that forge our greatest strength, our deepest wisdom, our most authentic selves. The moment you stop seeing conflict as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to embrace, as an opportunity for growth and deeper connection, everything changes. Your energy shifts some. Your approach transforms. Instead of dreading difficult conversations, you begin to welcome them as opportunities for breakthrough. But transformation doesn't happen through force. It happens through presence, through understanding, through compassion, not just for others, but for yourself as well. Imagine for a moment that every conflict in your life has been perfectly orchestrated to help you grow, to help you heal, to help you become more of who you truly are. How would that change how you approach difficult situations? How would that transform your response to challenging relationships? This brings us to another crucial understanding. The way you handle conflict becomes your legacy. It shapes not just your relationships, but the relationships of everyone around you. When you learn to handle conflict with grace and wisdom, you become a living example of what's possible. You create ripples of transformation that extend far beyond your immediate relations. Think about this. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, every time you choose connection over protection, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're not just resolving a conflict. You're evolving as a human being. You're contributing to the evolution of consciousness. This isn't always easy. There will be times when your buttons get pushed, times when old wounds get triggered, times when it feels easier to build walls than to build bridges. And that's okay. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is growth. Here's something most people never realize. Your triggers are your teachers. The person who pushes your buttons is showing you which buttons can still be pushed. The relationship that challenges you the most is often the one that can teach you the most. Think about it, as you, many of your greatest breakthroughs came through comfortable situations. How many of your deepest realizations emerged from easy relationships? It's often the challenges, the conflicts, the difficult conversations that lead to our most profound growth. Now, let me share something that might completely transform how you view conflict forever. Every argument, every disagreement, every moment of tension carries within it a hidden gift, the opportunity for deeper intimacy. Yes, you heard that right. The very situations that seem to threaten our connections are actually doorways to deeper connection. Think about the ocean for a moment. On the surface, there might be huge waves, turbulent waters, seeming chaos. But dive deep enough and you'll find absolute stillness. Our relationships are exactly like this. The conflicts we experience are just surface turbulence. Beneath every argument lies a deeper yearning for connection. That's a truth that might shake you to your core. The person you're in conflict with is often the person who can help you heal your deepest wounds. Not because they're trying to, but because they're triggering the exact places where you need to grow. The biggest obstacle in resolving conflicts isn't the other person's behavior, it's our own resistance to discomfort. We're so quick to avoid uncomfortable conversations, to sweep things under the rug. But real peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of understanding. How many times have you avoided a difficult conversation only to have the issue grow larger in silence? How many times has your fear of conflict actually created more conflict? This is where it gets really interesting. The moment you embrace discomfort as part of the growth process, everything changes. When you stop trying to make everything comfortable and start seeing discomfort as a sign that something important is happening, your entire approach to conflict transforms. Think of it like this: as physical muscles grow through resistance, our emotional and relational muscles grow through challenging situations. Every difficult conversation, every uncomfortable interaction, every moment of conflict is actually an opportunity to strengthen these muscles. But here's the key, and this is something most people never realize. The goal in conflict resolution isn't to win. It's not even to be right. The goal is to understand and to grow. When you shift your focus from winning to understanding, from being right to being connected, everything changes. Picture this is, you're in the middle of a heated argument. Your heart is racing. Your defenses are up. You've got all your arguments lined up. But what if, in that moment, you did something revolutionary? What if, instead of preparing your next point, you became deeply curious about what the other person is really trying to say? Because behind every complaint is a request. Behind every attack is a need. Behind every argument is a heart trying to be heard. When we understand this, we stop fighting the person and start addressing the underlying need. Let me share something that might transform how you handle every future conflict. The moment you shift from asking what's wrong with them to asking what's hurting in them, everything changes. Your energy shifts. Your approach transforms. Your heart opens. And this is crucial, you can only do this when you've made peace with your own pain, when you've embraced your own shadows, when you've acknowledged your own needs. This is why self-awareness isn't just helpful in conflict resolution. Think about this. Every time you react strongly to something someone says or does, it's usually because they've touched a wound that hasn't healed or a need that hasn't been met. Your triggers are actually showing you where you need to heal. Instead of trying to prove the other person wrong, get curious about why this situation is triggering you so strongly. Instead of defending your position, explore what this conflict is trying to teach you. What if every person who has ever hurt you was actually sent to heal you? What if every conflict you've experienced was actually a gift, an opportunity to become more of who you truly are? The way you handle conflict becomes your legacy. It shapes not just your relationships, but the relationships of everyone around you. When you learn to approach conflict with wisdom and grace, you become a living example of what's possible. Think about the ripple effects of this transformation. And you change how you handle conflict. You change how your children handle conflict. You change how your colleagues handle conflict. You change the very culture of your relationships. But here's what most people don't realize. This transformation doesn't happen through force. It happens through presence, through understanding, through compassion, not just for others, but for yourself as well. What if every conflict in your life was perfectly orchestrated to help you grow? How would that change how you approach difficult situations? How would that transform your response to challenging relationships. The moment you stop seeing conflict as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to embrace, as an opportunity for growth and deeper connection, everything changes. Your energy shifts. Your approach transforms. Instead of dreading difficult conversations, you begin to welcome them as opportunities for breakthrough. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a journey. And like any journey, it begins with a single step. That step is the willingness to see things differently, to respond differently, to show up differently. Think about this. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, every time you choose connection over protection, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're not just resolving a conflict. You're evolving as a human being. As we come to the close of our journey together, let me share something that might just change everything. The greatest conflicts in your life have the potential to become your greatest blessings. Yes, you heard that right. The very situations that feel like they're tearing you apart are actually trying to put you back together in a more authentic way. Think about a broken bone for a moment. When it heals properly, it becomes stronger at the point of the break. Our relationships are exactly the same. When we handle conflict correctly, the very place that caused pain can become the strongest part of the relationship. What if everything, every argument, every misunderstanding, every painful interaction was actually working for your highest good? What if there were no mistakes in relationships, only opportunities for growth? Here's the truth that most people never realize. The quality of your life is directly proportional to your ability to handle conflict with wisdom and grace. When you master this, you master life itself. But remember, the solution doesn't always look like what we think it should. Sometimes resolving a conflict means setting clear boundaries. Sometimes it means loving someone from a distance. Sometimes it means having the courage to walk away. The key is to make these decisions from a place of wisdom rather than woundedness. Think about water for a moment. When it meets an obstacle, it doesn't fight. It flows. It doesn't break. It adapts. It doesn't stop. It finds a new way. This is the essence of true conflict resolution. Every conflict carries within it the seeds of a greater understanding, a deeper connection, a more authentic relationship. But just like any seed, it needs the right conditions to grow. It needs the soil of patience, the water of understanding, the sunlight of compassion. Let's again, one final truth with it. The greatest gift you can give to any relationship is your own inner peace. When you're at peace with yourself, you bring that peace into every interaction. When you've healed your own wounds, you stop. Think about this. What if the purpose of relationship isn't to make us happy, but to make us whole? What if every conflict is actually an invitation to become more of who we truly are? Remember those birds I mentioned at the beginning? Their dance of accommodation wasn't about one bird completely giving up its space. It was about both birds finding a new way to be together. That's what real conflict resolution looks like. Not compromise where everyone loses something, but collaboration where everyone gains something new. As you leave here today, I want you to carry this understanding in your heart. You have within you everything you need to transform any conflict into an opportunity for growth. You have the wisdom. You have the power. You have the capacity to create profound change in all your relationships. But here's the transformation begins with you. It begins with your willingness to see things differently, to respond differently, to show up differently in your relationships. Imagine waking up tomorrow with this new understanding. Imagine approaching every interaction with the awareness that conflict isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Imagine meeting every challenging situation with curiosity instead of judgment. The power to transform your relationships lies not in changing others, but in changing how you show up in those relationships. When you change, everything changes. When you grow, everything grows. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, you create a ripple of transformation that extends far beyond your immediate relationship. Every time you choose connection over protection, you contribute to the healing of not just your own heart, but the collective heart of humanity. As we close, I want you to make a commitment to yourself, a commitment to approach conflict not as something to be feared, but as something to be embraced. A commitment to see every challenging relationship as an opportunity for growth. A commitment to become the person who brings understanding, wisdom, and grace to every interaction. The way you handle conflict becomes your legacy. It shapes not just your relationships, but the relationships of everyone around you. When you learn to navigate conflict with wisdom and grace, you become a living example of what's possible. You become a lighthouse, showing others the way through their own storms. You become a bridge, helping others cross the chasms of misunderstanding in their own relationships. You become a healer, not just of your own relationships, but of the very fabric of human connection. So let this be the moment you decide to see conflict differently, the moment you choose to respond differently, the moment you commit to showing up differently in all your relationships. Every conflict is an opportunity. Every challenge is an invitation. Every difficult relationship is a door waiting to be opened to greater understanding, deeper connection, and more authentic love. The journey begins now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect. But right here, right now, in this moment of decision, you have everything you need. You are everything you need to be. The power to transform your relationships lies within you, waiting to be awakened, waiting to be expressed, waiting to create miracles in your life and in the lives of everyone you touch. Let this be your moment of transformation. Let this be your moment of truth. Let this be the moment you decide to become the master of conflict resolution in your life. The journey has just begun, and it begins with you.